Hello my loves, continue to update new stories on Reddit, and don't forget if you like it, please subscribe and like it. Now let's start new stories. Story, update on my parents assume they will live with me when they are old. My 29F husband, 28M, and I are house hunting as we are expecting our third baby in November and are hoping to move out of our trailer park by the end of the summer. We were interested in a house that was essentially my dream home. Victorian, built in 1900, but completely refurbished on the inside but with all original wood floors and detailing. Gorgeous. A house like this would easily be $200,000 last year or the year before. But the housing market is dropping and we found it for approximate $140,000. We live in the Midwest. It has 4 to 5 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. My parents, the other day, asked where they would stay when we come to live with you. This was never a discussion. They just always assumed they would live with me when they are older. I always said no. Well, we messaged the finance person about what the monthly payments would really be. On the app, it estimated $950 plus a month. We figured we could swing that, but needed to know for sure before putting an offer in. She came back with over $1,000. Not doable for us. We are going through a program and have a grant. So we aren't rich. Lower middle class at best. Thankfully, we have another house we had in mind. A craftsman style, built in 1920. With built-ins, wood floors, and a nice-sized fenced-in backyard. The basement even has a slightly finished room, perfect for hiding from storms and tornadoes. And it's $20,000 less than the dream house. It's just a little smaller, and bedrooms were pretty small. But it's something I was willing to deal with. We saw it before we saw the dream house. Well, when updating my parents on the house situation, my mom all but threw a fit. You don't have to go with the first house you see. Me, it wasn't. You can wait until something else comes up. Me, actually, no we can't. Some weird law was passes in our state in regards to realtors and our realtor wants us to find a house before it goes into full effect in July/August. Which just gives us more incentive to find a house pronto. So far no other houses have popped up in our area in our budget. You are about to have your third kid. Where are you going to put him? Me, bunk beds are a thing. Are you going to sleep in the basement if you have more? Me, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It's so tiny. Me, it's bigger than what pictures show. But yes, compared to the dream house, it's definitely smaller than that. But it's also more realistic. I knew what she was really worried about. Where will we stay? Asterisk, but she didn't say it. She started looking at other houses on the app and tried to bring them up to me. They were all houses we had already looked at or were too far away from my husband's work. She was really trying. My dad was pretty chill about the whole thing. She even brought up a house that needed serious work. We want to live in the house, Mom. And we don't want a money pit. She practically growled at me. The call soon ended after that. ETA, for all of those explaining the realtor law thing to me in the comments, thank you. My husband did explain it to me as well, but I do better with reading information than hearing it. Also, I mentioned this in a few comments, but it might be buried soon. The craftsman is not looking doable for us either unless it goes down in price by like $10,000. We only qualified 4% 3 down in our program, so we would still be paying more than we can/want to each month. We are looking at other houses, some a little further away from my husband's job. It seems all the more affordable houses that are in decent shape are almost an hour commute from my husband's work. Which is something we are okay with. We aren't overly happy about it but are willing to roll with it because it's not the worst thing in the world. Story, my mother used a private conversation as ammunition to ridicule me, then blamed everyone else for it when she got called out for starting the gossip. I'm gonna give some fake names off the bat for easy reading. 24 female, Abby, 60 female, Abby's mom Lori, 60 female, and mom, 24 female, me. For added context, I still live at home, but pay all of my own bills plus rent. My parents strongly encouraged me to stay home and not waste money on higher rent until I bank more money. Rent is crazy in my area, which I agreed to. Abby moved out of Lori's house a couple months ago. Both of us, Abby and I, also have ADHD to some degree that went undiagnosed into our 20s. We have the situation where Mom and Lori are best friends, and when Abby and I met as little kids, we were instantly best friends too. For the most part it's fine, but we definitely use our own friendships to vent about our mom's daughters, as one might expect. However, those talks usually do not leave our own conversations and get spread around. That was until recently. One day while I was packing a bag to stay over Abby's place, my mom walked straight into my bedroom without knocking or a hello and said the following: "Gosh, your room is a total pigsty all the time. I frankly don't know how you live like this." Lori says that Abby used to be a mess too, but cleaned up once she moved out. Lori said it was strange, but I think it makes total sense. You two just have no respect for your mothers and their homes. This obviously started an argument where I explained that Abby and I always struggled with organization but have worked really hard to do better, and accusing us of doing it out of spite is uncalled for. Plus, renting my bedroom means it's my bedroom. I also pointed out I was actively packing to go see Abby, so the timing for a fight was awful, and then my mom said, "Oh well, if you had told me that I wouldn't be chatting," and then walked away quickly. I vented to Abby about it when I arrived, and warned her that my mom is twisting Lori's words about Abby to victimize herself and berate me. Abby told Lori, and Lori decided to confront Mom on how she handled that information and used it on me. So now, my mom randomly pulled me aside and this is what she said: "Hey, so just in theory, if I maybe slip up sometimes and might tell you something I spoke with Lori about, you really should keep that to yourself. You know Abby is a gossip and going to ruin our dynamic with the drama." My jaw was on the floor. My response was, "That's what you got out of that situation. If you hadn't used Lori to spin your own narrative against me, I never would have had a reason to say anything. You started this, and Lori was clearly confronting you on it." She was then silent and quickly changed the subject. Christ. Story: sleepover party that felt like it would never end. This time this isn't the same family from the pool party story. This is a completely different family. Also apologize for probably another long post. So this was back in 2018. I was in the 5th grade and got invited to my best friend's birthday party. We will call her Vicky. Me and Vicky are no longer friends currently and probably won't be ever again. Some context is that we had a friend group falling outing where I called out Vicky's homophobia and racism. She said slurs that were very offensive to both the LGBTQ+ community and said slurs that are offensive to Black people, Asian people, Mexican people, and more. I was very excited to go to Vicky's house, and she and I were very excited. I had been friends with Vicky at that point for about 4 to 5 years. So this party was a massive milestone for us. I got to the party to hearing karaoke playing from my friend group's favorite movie. Vicky and another girl were singing the intro to Disney Descendants. I was told by Vicky's mom to drop my bag at the front door. I grabbed my iPad and asked for the Wi-Fi password so I can keep in contact with my family about how things were going. At that time I was very connected with my parents and family, and when I'm not home I would text and call my parents goodnight and updates randomly. Well, Vicky's mom, aka New EM, said no, and when I explained to EM why I needed the password, she harshly told me no again. She said if I want to leave I need permission from her to use the house phone to contact my parents. I at the time didn't know my parents' number and I needed to have EM next to me during that call. Well, 30 to 40 minutes of singing we got bored and we had to wait for food to arrive still. At that time I had been there for at the longest 40 minutes while the others had been there for 2 whole hours. I still don't know what had been going on for those 2 hours, but I'm glad my mom's aunt, whom I'm no contact with, was pulling and braiding my hair, cornrows BTW. Finally Vicky's dad came home with the food and drinks. Before this EM told us we are not to have snacks or drinks beforehand. Most of the girls were starving and ran towards the pizza. Most of the girls didn't eat before showing up, and they had been there since around 3 p.m. Some showed up around 2 p.m. I only made it around 5 p.m. So about 6 p.m. we had cleared out as a group 2 or 3 boxes of pizza. EM was mad that we ate so much and stormed out of the house. Vicky said she's probably going to go pick up her brothers from basketball. Also, before anyone say we ate too much or how insensitive of us to eat all the food that had just been provided for us, there was 5 pizzas there. Also, there was a total of 8 or 10 girls there. Currently this was just about 7 years ago, so I don't fully remember, but there was a lot of girls at this party. I grabbed my iPad to play some Wi-Fi-less games with the other girls while we waited for the next part of the party. I asked Vicky if she knew the Wi-Fi password, but she actually didn't know it. Vicky's mom claims that her children are terrible, so they aren't allowed to know the Wi-Fi password and have a 3-hour time limit on their shared iPad. There was baby child locks on the iPad. They can't download and delete games on the iPad. To sum it up, when Vicky's mom entered the house without her sons, so where had she been? I'm not sure. Vicky begged her mom to download at the time a new game called Gotcha Studio. Yes, I had the app at the time, and no, I no longer play/use the app because of the community. It was strange because when Vicky asked her mom for the app, her mom spoke to her in such a sweet tone. Then afterwards was almost yelling at everyone else in a harsh way. After Vicky got the app and played for a total of 5 minutes, her mom requested the iPad back. She gave it back because she trusts her mom. She did not get the iPad back until almost the end of the sleepover party. After the iPad was taken from Vicky, she instructed us to go to her kitchen and start making her birthday cake. We had to make a giant peppermint brownie cake for Vicky. Even though she was told to go sit down on the couch and stare at the blank TV, she joined us. Vicky's mom told her to go relax even though she passed her certain amount of hours of screen time. This meant she couldn't watch the TV for the rest of the day. Vicky joined us out of boredom. Once her dad came inside from chasing her chickens around for a few eggs, he asked where her brothers were. After finding out her mom had not gotten them, he left to pick them up. After Vicky's dad came back to see a finished brownie that just needs to be baked, he said, "Oh, I'm glad you used those old candy canes. They've been sitting out since 2016. I was grossed out, but they seemed fine, so I don't know if he was joking or not. Something that kept happening was that I would get a soda, take a few sips, and somebody would move it. I found out the next day it was both of Vicky's brothers. I had to keep getting multiple sodas because they would move it next to theirs and the other girls' sodas. In total, I opened about 4 or 5 different sodas, not one of them finished because the boys were drinking from the random sodas. I found that very unsanitary, so I just kept getting a new one. I eventually stopped getting new ones because I was getting tired of opening new sodas just for them to get moved. We found out that there was no more icing, so we just had plain brownies, which I was fine with. When we cut the brownie, I was handed the smallest piece from Vicky's mom. Everybody got a small piece, but I got the smallest due to my misbehavior. What was it that I did wrong, you may ask? I drank 4 to 5 sodas. Due to this, I didn't need any more sugar. At this point, most of the girls left before we could open gifts. I suspect some of them called for their parents to pick them up. I know 1 or 2 girls had their own phone with them. I didn't know my parents' phone number at the time, so I couldn't call no matter how much I wanted to leave. So now at this point, there's only about 3 or 4 girls at the party. It's currently 7:05 p.m. and we head outside to go play on Vicky's playground and get ready to hit the piñata. We were excited, and Vicky asks her mom to be outside and record her and her friends hitting the piñata. EM agrees to be outside and record, but says she's going to take a quick shower first and then she'll be outside. Well, we waited till almost 9 at night outside for her to return. EM finally comes back when the sky is dark outside. It wasn't too dark, but just dark enough for you to question why you're outside playing still instead of inside getting ready for dinner then bed. We hit the piñata and grab candy. Well, EM didn't like that we all got huge bagfuls and her son's bags aren't as big. EM's sons had big bags full of candy, just not as much as some of us had. So EM made us give 2 big handfuls of our candies to her boys. The boys were both in 3rd grade and 2nd grade. They both were happy with what they got and didn't care if they got more or not. We were unhappy but gave them our candies. We went inside to open presents, but EM insisted we open only 3 presents, then we go see what her grandparents got her. Vicky opened the presents of the remaining girls' items. Then the 2 girls left because their parents came to pick them up. That left me and Andrea. She's not too important to the story, but it would be nice to give her a name. So now was the time for the final gift for the night. Vicky, Andrea and Vicky's dad and brother got into the van with me and we drove 15 to 20 minutes out of town. I asked before leaving if they could call my parents and tell them where I'm going, but I was told no. Nobody in the car other than Vicky's dad knew where we were going. Something that happened that made me super uncomfortable was that in the car I was given a flashlight because it would be dark by the time we got where we're going. I turned on the flashlight by accident. Thankfully it wasn't pointed at any mirrors. When it went off it hit the ceiling of the van. It was obvious what happened and Vicky's dad told me not to do it again, which is a reasonable request. He then said in a joking voice, "Don't do it again because you'll blind the driver and will crash," then proceeded to swerve the car, almost crashing. He did this repeatedly for a solid 5 minutes. It was scary mainly because he drove on the wrong side of the road and almost crashed into oncoming cars and parked cars. He stopped thankfully, and we all moved on like it didn't happen. I was mainly shaken up the most. As we drove I realized nobody knew where we were going. It wasn't until we got close to the location did Vicky and her brothers knew where we were going. I was getting nervous though. I was in the middle of nowhere pretty much. We were outside some fruit farm, which I won't name which fruit because it'll give away too much information. We pull up and it was dark outside. I was actually scared and so was Andrea, which I later on found out that Andrea had strict parents and she was told not to leave the house no matter what. She left the house because it would be awkward if she stayed back and would be left basically by herself. EM decided that she wasn't going to go because it would be boring. EM's children begged her to join us and I was glad she decided to stay home and do work. Off topic, Vicky had a puppy which she later on told me they locked it inside a shelf closet, a tiny closet with shelves almost touching the ground. The closet could support a thin small child if you tried to put somebody in there. Keep this in mind that the dog has been in that closet the whole time and was locked in there for almost a full 24 hours. Back to the main story, we stayed out there for about 30 minutes just to find nothing was out there but an old treehouse which was about to collapse. The gift was that Vicky's grandparents paid to get a new treehouse for her and she gets to pick out where the new treehouse will go. She picked the middle of the fruit farm and asked if we could drive farther out. Thankfully her dad said no. I also later on found out that we were right in the area where commonly tarantulas, rattlesnakes and other possible dangerous animals tend to lurk. We finally get back and watched The Greatest Showman, which was Vicky's favorite movie at the time. We were all given small bowls of popcorn and when I tried to get more like Andrea did I was told no harshly and to save some for everyone else. Everybody else had gotten about 2 or more bowls of popcorn. I was so ready to go home at that point, but had no way to tell my parents to pick me up. The movie ended, and we were told to go to bed. When I ran downstairs to bring my bag of clothes upstairs and see if I could get Wi-Fi or guess the Wi-Fi password to tell my parents to pick me up, EM was at the top of the stairs waiting for me. She told me to hand over my iPad and I could get it back in the morning. So I handed it over. I was stuck there for the rest of the night. I was too scared to ask EM if I could call my parents to leave or stand up against her. So I went to Vicky's room to sleep. By morning everyone was very distant towards me because I stayed the night. I got up first, made my bed and got dressed because I just wanted to leave. Me, Andrea and Vicky headed downstairs once we heard EM wake up. The rule was don't leave your room for breakfast or to be downstairs in the morning until EM is downstairs. Andrea stayed the night before in the past and even warned me don't leave the room to use the bathroom unless I really have to, otherwise I will get in trouble. We head downstairs, open the rest of the presents and then we had breakfast. We all got one pancake, only Vicky's brothers got two pancakes, but they were so small it was basically a total of one. At this point it was almost 12, so I thought it would be fine to have a soda because it was close to the afternoon. When Andrea saw that I got a soda, she also got one. Once we opened the soda, started yelling at us. She wasn't in the same room, but her yell was the kind that parents do when you break a window. She yelled, "Who the hell opened a soda?" She stomped in and snatched our sodas. Andrea looked genuinely scared and said, "You didn't ask if we could have soda?" I didn't think it was a problem before. We got scolded by and she told us both we can have water and milk, we need permission for soda and juice. I can understand soda needs a request, but apple juice and orange juice needs permission? I thought it was ridiculous, but I didn't argue because I was terrified. We got yelled at and she left to sit in the dining room. The dining room is next to the kitchen, but there's a wall that makes it hard for us to see her. She spent most of the party in the dining room. My dad called to tell he's on his way, thankfully. Was talking to Andrea about how Andrea's mom made a joke about how she could live there since she's over so often. I wanted her to think I had an amazing time, so I tried to chime in saying I had a great time and I would love to stay here sometime in the future again. Side-eyed me and said I wasn't talking to you, then rolled her eyes at me. I wanted to leave at that moment. Thankfully my dad showed up a few minutes later, and before I left tried to keep my iPad. I asked for it back while my dad was there and went and got it, but handed the iPad to my dad and not me. She then said to my dad, "Your daughter drank 5 sodas and ate 3 slices of pizza." My dad wanted to leave because he was getting a weird vibe from Me and my dad hurried out. He handed back my iPad but scolded me for drinking so much soda. It was the worst birthday party I've ever been to. I'm so glad that I grew a backbone finally at the age of 17, therefore this would never had happened again, let alone I have a phone that is wireless reception so I can get out of these crazy situations. Overall, I'm glad I'm no longer in contact with that crazy family. Story: A pool party and an entitled mom. Hello, I remembered this gem from a few years ago and think this will be perfect for this channel. Also, apologies for this being so long, so much happened here that I just remembered. Also, I'm a junior in high school, currently on summer break, about to be a senior. This happened back in 2019 when I was in 6th grade summer break going on to 7th grade. On that day I was invited to a pool party for my dad's friend's daughter returning from vacation in Mexico with her grandmother. We'll call the daughter Ed, entitled daughter. Well, Ed was just returning and wanted to go swimming. She just got a pool built in her backyard that looked identical to mine, just hers had a hot tub, ours did not. I expected to just go to house, entitled mom, because she lived next door. Turns out the party wasn't at her house. I assumed this meant we would be going to a friend's house in the neighborhood, but no. We all hopped into the car to head to the public pool. I was cool with it. Thankfully my mom gave me money for food just in case the pool party wasn't at somebody's house. We get to the pool just for to expect us to pay for our own bracelets. I'm cool with it due to having my own money, but I was confused. I assumed since she invited us out she was paying for us. I pay for my ticket, but I turned to see my friends. I'll call them Esmeralda and Ashley. Esmeralda is the younger one of the sisters, close to Ed age, and the older sister Ashley is about my age. They both didn't bring any money because we thought we were swimming at somebody's house and not a public pool. Started scolding them and paid, mumbling about how their mom owes them now. Isabella, the youngest there, paid for herself because her family had gave her money. Lastly, Ed, older cousin by 3 years, was paid for only because he's family and his mom was sending money to his aunt when he stayed there. So we finally get in and I'm really hungry and decided I'm going to eat first because I skipped breakfast, I think. I got a lot of food due to my mom giving me $20. From what I remember, I got a hot dog, some chips, ice cream, and slushie. I understand how crazy it was that I ate that, but I had some issues at the time at home. To sum it, because I don't feel like getting too into it, basically to sum it up, I ate whatever I wanted when I wasn't home because my family was controlling over food. I also had health issues that made me eat more plus medication. Anyways, looked at me in disgust and said you shouldn't eat all that because she wandered off. I knew what she was trying to say, but she remembered that my dad is friends with her fiancé, and if she said what she was planning to say it can cause issues. So she remembered something that she thought would work. She said your mom wouldn't be okay with you eating all that. I responded, but I don't recall what it was that I told her. I got into the pool after eating and played in the water for a bit. Every time I lightly splashed, my friend Ashley, or EDM, would get mad and yell at me and Ashley because we were the oldest and should act our age. We were also then expected to watch the little kids and follow them around. Me and Ashley didn't want to, but did so because it got embarrassing being stared at by everyone when would yell at us. Me and Ashley barely got to do what we wanted in the pool. Mind you, me and Ashley are in 6th and 7th grade watching a 4th grader, 3rd grader, and a 2nd grader, instead of enjoying the pool. If me and Ashley knew we were going to be used as unpaid babysitters, we would have stayed home and swam at my house. The kids got out of the pool because they got hungry. So we followed. I also wanted a popsicle because it hit 103 degrees at that time. When we first got to the pool, it was about 95 degrees. Side-eyed me and said you don't need any more food because I ate 4 hours ago. We were at this pool for about 9 hours in total. I said I know, but I just want a popsicle. So she allowed me to take my coin purse back and buy one. At first she said I have to give the other kids the rest of my money so they can eat. I lied and said popsicles were $2 and I only have 2 left. Got upset and scolded me, saying I shouldn't have gotten all that food and now the other wouldn't get to eat. I brought my own money and so did Isabella. Pulled out $5 and told them to share, but when Isabella refused the money, saying she had her own, asked how much she had and she said she had $30 or $40, but her mom said it's only for her and to return the rest to her mom. Took back her $5 and said Isabella has to pay for all the kids because she has the most money and her mom would be fine with it. Also, never paid back Isabella's mom. The kids cost her $30. I got a popsicle and I bought the last Sour Patch Kids, which was for my older brother because he was super nice to me that week. I enjoyed 2 popsicles and placed the candy in my bag secretly because I didn't want to let the other kids see the candy. Shamed Jack, Isabella, and Esmeralda for what they got. I shared with Ashley some of my food because we were super close. Was mad that I didn't share with her daughter Ed. We went swimming again afterwards and came back a few hours later to complaining about random stuff then wanting to leave. So we packed up our stuff and Ashley was complaining about hunger to me quietly to not be scolded by for not making Isabella pay for her meal. So I gave her a few Sour Patch Kids because I accidentally opened the box when I grabbed my clothes. I put the box back quietly and then I turned to who was shaming me for buying candy and not sharing with the other kids. She then says, "OP, you need to share with the other kids because you ate enough for today." When the other kids heard I had candy, they all ran up begging for candy. When I tried to explain to the candy is mainly for my brother, she accused me of lying and said I had to share. The kids ran to my bag and excited for candy and took the candy from my bag and shared it between all the kids. After give the kids handfuls of candy, she gave me and Ashley 3 pieces each for being greedy. The only thing that kept me looking forward to this day was going to pick up ice cream at an ice cream shop. As soon as we got close though, said we don't deserve ice cream and said we will get some at her house. As soon as we get there, we got mini Otter Pops. Ashley declined because she wanted ice cream and went home to get some from her house. Everyone else, shockingly enough, including me, got an Otter Pop. Only half though, because we didn't deserve a full Otter Pop. It was also the mini Otter Pops. I went home disappointed but didn't tell my parents for fear of getting in trouble for the food I ate. Story: I discovered a family secret which allowed me to escape my entitled mom and stepdad's abuse. Hey, so first thing first. My GF recommended that I share this story because this is something that everyone might enjoy. So, I decided that I would post it here, under a throwaway. Mostly because my previous posts on my main would all but make my IRL ID apparent, and because I do not want the artificial boost to my karma. Growing up, I had thought that I had good relationship with my parents, mom and dad/stepdad, and my three younger siblings, YB1, YS, and YB2. However, around 5th grade my relationship had begun to change. I had always exceeded at school, so my parents sent me to a private school that had really good test scores and students had good placements in colleges later on. However, my last year I was really excited to go on to a private middle school that all of my friends and I had gotten accepted into. Unfortunately, at that time my parents sat me down and explained to me that they did not have the money to pay for my tuition and had to withdraw YB1 and YS's applications to the elementary school that I had gone to for the same reason. So, I would be enrolled in the local public middle school the following year. Towards the end of 5th grade, we were doing science class, and my teacher started our Intro to Genetics unit. That lesson has stayed with me since, because my appearance is so different compared to my parents. As of now I'm in my 20s and I share literally no features with my mom. So, I started to begin asking my teacher some very difficult questions about genetics in class, and after answering which traits tend to be dominant, she realized where I was going and immediately shut me down. Over that summer I read pretty much every book I could on the subject before I did something dumb. I went to my dad and asked him if I was adopted. This conversation didn't end well. I don't remember everything that was said, but it escalated very quickly and ended with him hitting me. My dad hit me so hard that he actually broke my right cheekbone. My mom rushed me to the hospital, and I was coached saying that I was accidentally hit by a doorknob, which I eventually had to repeat the same thing to CPS. After a week back from the hospital, my mom and dad revealed to me that he was actually my stepdad. When they were in college, my mom was dating a guy who she said was a real asshole. When they found out that she was pregnant, he left her, but my stepdad stepped up and did everything that he could, and they put his name on my birth certificate. My mom then explained that when I confronted my stepdad that it really hurt him and lashed out in anger. It was wrong and they both asked for forgiveness. I unfortunately agreed. We seemed to go back to being a somewhat normal family again, but I began to notice things that I didn't before. Whenever my younger siblings needed something, my mom and stepdad would drop everything to help them. Meanwhile, I was told to figure it out myself. For birthdays, I would get next to no attention, usually just a hug from my mom. I didn't even get a cake after I turned 6. Meanwhile, my siblings would get a party and the works pulled out for them. My stepdad would come back from work and wanted nothing to do with me. Even as a little kid, I was a massive nerd who wanted to go to museums and all those nerdy kid things and had zero interest in sports. My brothers were the exact opposite, and he spent much of his free time playing or watching sports with them. If my brothers wanted to go to see a game or something, my stepdad would move heaven and earth to bring them and usually drag me along. If I wanted to see the new Devonian fossil exhibit at the local museum, then there was no way I could go because he was busy. Once he even told me, "Sorry, but that basketball game took up your entire entertainment budget this month." By the way, that was the same game that when he saw that I brought my copy of Cosmos, he threw it out because I shouldn't have brought a book to a family event. There were several more things my parents did that showed their favoritism when I was younger, but this is already going to be a long post. What I do want to point out is that this wasn't a new behavior that developed after the truth came out. This had been ongoing over the years, and I just chopped it to me being the eldest sibling. Middle school was absolutely hell. I was and still am an introvert who would usually rather be by himself reading than talking to people. In my old school, I was still the odd one out, but I didn't get singled out for it and had friends. At the public school, I was quickly singled out and bullied, which caused my mental health severely declined, and my parents refused to intervene because it would toughen you up. I was bullied, but I fought back and then they became my friends. That's just how guys become friends. Of course, I am sure anyone here can assume correctly that the facility was about as helpful. I did try to fight back once and all it did was got 3 different kids to gang up on me and suspended for 3 days. The only friend that I was able to make was an older kid called Devin. Devin was 3 years older than me, but he actually took sympathy on me and decided to protect me from my bullies. Over the next 3 years, my situation at home quickly began to decline. My younger siblings had picked up on my parents' apathy and my decreased confidence and began to harass me. If they wanted something I had, they took it. They would call me names and would play pranks on me, which when I told my parents told me I needed to lighten up. Needless to say, this did not help my situation. My parents also became extremely harsh on me, and I did get beaten from time to time. Towards the end of my first year of middle school, I came home from the library, and I saw a letter from the middle school that I wanted to go to. I immediately opened. It was a letter declining the application for YB1 and YS. I did not see anything for me, so I went to my parents. They punished me for opening their mail, but when I pushed it, they told me that YB1 and YS did more to deserve going to that middle school. Mind you, at this time, and before I had near perfect grades. When I argued that if they could afford to send YB1 and YS, then I should be able to go. I was beaten for talking back and opening my parents' mail. I will be honest, during this time I did try self-harm. Whenever I did, my situation would briefly improve. I became the center of my parents' world, teachers would intervene to stop the bullying, and even some of the kids at school would begin to be friendly to me. But after a week, things would quickly slide back. The only person who was actually there for me in my life was Devin. One day, during the early part of 8th grade, I broke down and told Devin about my biological father. I had been having thoughts about why he abandoned me when he found out. How it was partially his fault that my life was the way it was. There was a lot else I said, but that was the key part. During my venting session, I revealed that my mom had let my dad's first and last name slip recently, and I knew his name. So, Devin offered help me research my dad. That day Devin and I went to his house and began to essentially cyberstalk him. My bio dad was, still is, a college professor at a research university about 200-ish miles from where we lived. We also found that he was married, and I learned I had another younger sister, and my stepmom was pregnant. That night Devin and I hatched a plan, which we would carry out the following day. I came to school, and as soon as I stepped off the bus, I went the high school student parking lot and got into Devin's car, and we left. We arrived at the university around noon. After parking, Devin immediately went to the student center and asked which office my dad worked at and got directions. We went there and he was gone on lunch. But when he came back about an hour later, he saw us sitting outside his office and asked who we were. I remember asking for his name, and then asking if he knew my mom. When he confirmed both, I told him who I was and that I believed I was his son. I just wanted to say, as chessy as it sounds to me looking back, it is Devin who coached me on that. Bastard probably just watched a bad Hallmark drama or something. I remember that he immediately hugged me warmly and started saying, "Oh my God," over and over. He immediately brought us in his office to talk and cancelled his classes for the day. After that Devin left, and my dad took me home and introduced me to his family. My stepmom was surprised. She knew my dad had a son, but a 13-year-old popping out of nowhere is kind of a surprise. Then they explained what happened. According to my dad, he was dating my mom during their senior year of college, when she told him that she was pregnant. He and my mom were having problems in their relationship, and he suspected that she was cheating on him. He was planning on breaking up with her when she had told him. He honestly suspected that it was an attempt to stay together. So he told her that he would be willing to do a paternity test and co-parent, but that he refused to be in a relationship. Turns out that my mom was cheating on him with my stepdad, and when he had a much more positive response, she cut contact with my dad. When my dad married my stepmom, he told her that he may have had a child, and they decided to look my mom up on Facebook and saw a few pictures of me. Remember how I have no significant features with my mom or stepdad? Turns out I look almost identical to my dad. So, he knew immediately. He had reached out to my mom via FB, but she immediately blocked him. He had considered getting a lawyer but figured it would be all but impossible to get custody or even visitation rights without a paternity test. which my mom and stepdad could have blocked. I told him everything that my mom and stepdad had put me through, even more than what had been said above. When I finished, I was crying, and my stepmom was consoling me. After it was all out, my dad wordlessly stood up, went into the next room and called a lawyer, and then called the police. The police, social services, and CPS all showed up and took me into custody. To summarize everything, I was taken out of my mom's and stepdad's custody and became a temporary ward of the state. A paternity test was taken, and it confirmed everything that my dad told me. Then I was placed into my dad and stepmom's care, and I was given a restraining order until I reached the age of 18. I won't pretend that everything was perfect. Looking back on it, I did cause some strain on my dad's marriage, because he immediately favored me over my half-siblings. My dad and stepmom did recover, and they placed sensible boundaries. I was enrolled in a much better school where I was able to make real friends. I never forgot Devin. We stayed in contact, but due to the distance our contact isn't as consistent as it used to be. We still talk regularly though. Devin is doing well. After high school he became an underwater welder for an oil company, which apparently pays really well. We have met for drinks and to catch up. I asked him why he protected me. He said he wasn't sure, but for whatever reason when he saw me getting bullied it just caused something to snap. He also said that he kind of saw me as someone who needed a big brother figure in his life, and that it was the right thing to do. After high school, I went on to college and I was fairly popular as my confidence had been completely rebuilt. I majored in biology and minored in geology. I am currently a PhD student working in paleontology. I love it. I get to go on university-sponsored digs. Normally they are in the States, but last year I got to go to South Africa and Namibia. My mom and stepdad reached out to me a few months ago to try and get me to help tutor YB2 and YS. YS had dropped out of college a few years ago because it was too difficult for her. Although she wanted to go back and finish her program, and YB2 wants to get into a good college next year but doesn't have to grades and wants help studying for the ACTs. During that conversation I noticed my heart was beating out of control, and that I was having difficulty breathing. I am certain that it was a panic attack, but I had never had anything like that, so I just hung up on my mom and sat on the couch. The following day I began to receive a couple of texts from my mom's kids asking for help and blocked all of their numbers. Afterwards I didn't hear from them, until I received a barrage of emails from them on my university email. Essentially they were apologizing for how they treated me and that they wanted to fix things so we could be a family. Originally, I had decided that I wanted to send an email back telling them that I wanted no further contact and that even hearing from them was casing a traumatic response over a decade later, and that I feel the only reason that they are reaching out is because they want a free tutor. I never sent it. Instead, I decided simply to block them. In April I went on a dig in Texas, and received a call from the police telling they had been called to my apartment because they had been told that someone had broken in. It was YB1 trying to get in contact with me. I told the police that he was not supposed to be there and that I would like trespassing charges pressed. As it was a first offense, he was able to plea bargain it down to 100 hours of community service. I got back home at the end of May, and I haven't heard from them yet. I think that they got the idea and decided to stop contacting me. Regardless, I have a strong relationship with my dad. We have spent a long time building that relationship and make up for lost time. I have a good relationship with my younger half-siblings from my dad and stepmom. I play with them and spend a lot of time with them, but there is a fairly big age gap between us. My stepmom and I are on good terms. I'm not sure how to describe our relationship, but I would say that while she didn't completely replace the role of a mom in my life, she did become a motherly figure. I have no idea if that makes sense, but it is the best way I can phrase it. I am not entirely sure how to end this. There might be something like a message here, but probably not. I really did just feel that I should share my story. Although I have been sitting here and after initially writing this, when I was recalling the abuse I suffered, and started to proofread it, I started to feel extremely anxious. I think that I may have some suppressed trauma and will be looking to get therapy. Story: Woman called me a racist little bitch because I didn't let her cut the line for a drink. Hello. My previous job had me working as a food service worker in a bakery. I worked at a certain berry-themed amusement park, and I worked there for about 2 years before quitting a few months back for a job that pays me better. I liked the job for the most part. Most people were cool and I really only encountered difficult people during busy seasons, and my coworkers, with the exception of 2 who hated me, had me during these encounters. We were also right next to the park's security office. The way my location was set up was a little bit weird and specific. It was a bakery with 3 massive display cases separating us as the employees from the customers, 2 registers between the display cases and our soda machine, and a little nook off to the side. In this nook, there were 3 machines, a massive coffee pot, a hot chocolate machine that was just a little broken and always messy despite my best efforts to keep it clean, and a run-down little latte machine. There's a counter right next to this machine where the coffees and stuff would be called out. There was also 2 registers set up outside at this time because it was busy season and this was the most efficient way for us as employees to serve customers. There was almost always 1 or 2 people on the register outside, and this time it was my team lead, basically a mini manager, who really liked me because I trained him. This happened on my last day there. This park has a drink program where anybody with the annual pass could pay an extra $10 or so and redeem a free fountain drink every 15 minutes. People who weren't pass holders also could get the drink program by buying a souvenir bottle for like $30 that they could use throughout the day and reactivate if they came on a different day. A lot of people with this drink program tended to feel like they didn't need to wait in lines for their drink redemption, and it was common for them to walk up to the other side of the counter and ask for their refill, and usually, they were annoyed but never malicious when I or one of my coworkers told them that they unfortunately had to wait in line for drinks, as many people in line were also just getting drinks. Not this lady though, oh no. This lady was out for blood, and she must have sensed that I was in a good mood. It was the last hour and a half of my final shift. I was busy cleaning up a couple of messes that had been made throughout the day by the hot chocolate and latte machines, and was simultaneously talking to my managers and other leads about my plans for the future, about where I pick up my last check, etc., etc. Suddenly, I heard somebody unscrewing the lids off their cups and pushing them towards me. This woman was a little taller than me. I'm 5 feet 3 inches, had sunglasses and a baseball cap on, and didn't look very pleasant. You develop a 6th sense for difficult people when working for theme parks, you see. She had 2 souvenir bottles on the counter and was holding them out to me. I smiled at her and told her, "Oh, I'm sorry, you actually have to wait in line to get refills. I know it's inconvenient, but it's park policy." She scoffed at me and said, "I'm just getting drinks," and I reiterated that she still had to wait in line, adding that even though the line was really long right now, there were other people in it who were also just getting drinks. So she disappears and I assumed that she'd gone to wait in the, admittedly pretty long, line. In that time I finished cleaning the machines and returned to helping customers in line with my other coworkers. About 5 minutes pass and this lady comes storming back in, cutting the line again and walking up to the register. She pointed at me and said, "You." It's important to note here that I am mixed race, but look white and am usually perceived as white because TBH, I didn't go outside much at this time and have only recently started getting my darker color back. This woman was black, and most of my coworkers are POC. I'm also autistic with low support needs. I'm just a little awkward and anxious, fidgety, and have trouble making eye contact despite my best efforts, so I'm sure that had something to do with why this lady locked onto me and not my other neurotypical coworkers. She kept yelling at me, saying, "You're a racist little bitch, aren't you? You lied to me because I'm black. I wasted all that time in line and your manager told me that you lied to me. You did this because I'm black, didn't you?" I, as any reasonable person would be, was startled. I had been trained for conflicts like this because I was supposed to be a team lead before management changed, and I was usually the person to deal with customers like her for that exact reason. This was partially why I quit. Regardless, this was my first time being cussed at by a customer in a malicious way. I said, "I'm sorry about that, but I didn't lie to you. I can get you your drinks, though." So, she basically threw her cups at me and said, "I want Coke and Diet Coke." I gave her those, and handed her back the cups one by one, telling her which was which. She promptly scoffed and said, "You didn't put them in the right cups. Are you stupid?" And she pushed the cups back at me. I had enough at that point and asked one of my friends to take over for me as I went to go talk to my lead outside. I went out there and told him about the lady, and he informed me that he did not, in fact, tell her to cut the line. He said that he scanned her drink pass, and told her to just wait for one of us behind the counter to help her, and we'd get to her as soon as possible. I told him about her insults to me, and just like that, boom, she appeared behind me. This woman had followed me outside and started berating me in front of my lead and hundreds of customers, one again calling me a racist little bitch and saying that I hated black people, that I was a lazy piece of shit, that I didn't know how to do my job, and that I had no right to be standing there and doing fuck all when the line was out the door. My lead stood up for me, and I'd finally just told her, "It's my last day. You can't talk to me that way," and walked away. She didn't follow me again, and even though I had kept my cool for the entirety of the interaction, it hit me all at once and I had a small meltdown in the bakery storage room. My coworkers, now friends, were very understanding and let me take my time, and thankfully this woman did not ruin my day. I don't miss that job. Seriously, man, if you're gonna go to a theme park, please be nice to the workers. I can tell you from experience that most parks are single-handedly run by teenagers, and unless it's a big park like the one I currently work at, management is in their early to mid-20s and corporate doesn't care about us. Be nice. Please. Story: What is wrong with me? Since I was an adolescent, I had this thing that I think/thought is a gift from God. I can look to people and read their emotional state, intention, and stuff like that. Or so, I think. When I had a girlfriend, from time to time, I would get suspicious and start to think that my girlfriend is cheating, lying, hiding things from her past. This would hurt me big time. I would obviously find one or two things that can be understood as evidence and proof of my claims or suspicions. Most interestingly, I can't really tell why the past of my girlfriends and wife are so important to me when I also believe that God can heal your spirit and that your past does not condone you if you ask for forgiveness full-heartedly. I hurt so many people to the point of either breaking them, or maybe I just didn't know them as I thought. Anyway, I destroyed several relationships because of this. When I grew older, I met a very special person, but the suspicions remained. I would accuse her of being unfaithful constantly. I'd be certain that she was lying to me. Sometimes, she was lying. Sometimes, she wasn't. I also hurt her a lot because of this. Maybe the fact that I was right sometimes is just because we're humans, so we make mistakes. If you think somebody did something bad, but you don't know exactly what, you're probably right. People do bad stuff all the time. Since I was a kid, I would see people snorting a white powder, and I would question myself what that was. It took me some time to realize that it wasn't salt. When I was a kid, I tried to snort salt, and it was not very pleasant. Sometime after I was married, I decided to experiment cocaine. I went to my cousin, who was a recovered crackhead. He told me he had stopped snorting cocaine. I really didn't think about how bad of an idea it was to both fulfill my curiosity about the drug while asking for an ex-drug addict to use drugs with me. I do not feel so bad today because I found it that he did not stop snorting at all. To this day, he is still doing drugs. Either way, I tried it, thought I didn't feel a thing, but I actually felt. I started mixing cocaine and alcohol, increasing the frequency of use. Stopped drinking and kept the cocaine for good. Time goes by, and I had a period of my life where I abused so much of cocaine that whenever I would hit a line, I would get instant psychosis. Where I live, what we call cocaine is actually just a mix where there's some cocaine in it. No wonder if I would try to smoke the best powder of the state in a cigarette, I would also get high from smoking it. I had a bad friend who would put things on my drug in order to steal my money or to do something that I am unaware of until today. Once, I am pretty sure this friend gave me a cup of water full of mowed mushrooms because I had some visual recording of small pieces floating at the bottom of the cup. Please don't judge, I was high on things I don't even remember. Too intoxicated to think before doing. After I stopped, I started having the most profound psychosis I ever had. I was certain that my wife was raped by this friend. She was sleeping with my kids. It was around 4 to 6 a.m. I ran to her bedroom and woke her up, saying that she was raped by this friend. A lot of things happened that day. I stayed around weeks with this psychosis. I could not let this go. Until this day, it is still hard to remember this without thinking that I am about to have a psychotic break. After this period, I started binging cocaine more often. I mixed it with mushrooms additionally 2 or 3 times. I used to take some Ritalin as well while binging cocaine for days without sleep. When I'd include Ritalin in the mix, I would get the most intense psychosis I ever had in my entire life. It was hell. The things I believe would hurt me so bad I would wish it was a dream the entire time. I have been clean for more than a year now, except for marijuana, which I am reducing with time. Even though today I am no longer using, almost every day, my mind talks to myself distantly, and I immediately start to feel the doom of these same thoughts. I think that my wife is cheating me with my dad, cousins, and brothers because I lived with my mom, dad, and children for months when I stopped. They helped me a lot to get my life together. I started to imagine that my mom and dad were hiding this from me because they fear I would use it again if I found out. It is important to point out that I do not hear voices or anything of the sort. I most likely listen my own voice. To the point of being afraid of thinking, because certain things that I tell myself, it simply sticks to my head so badly, then I need to do something about it to feel okay again, like, revisit a specific subject of my suspicions once again. Several times before I stopped, I went back using because of these thoughts, and even though the drug would worsen these beliefs, the drug would make it not hurt. It'd make me feel okay with these thoughts. It is simply destroying my life now. It is affecting my work like never before. I stay hours thinking about this every day. I talked to my wife several times about this, she answers me, she convinces and comforts me, but sometimes it feels like I need this again, like we never talked about this, or it feels like we never sort this out, even though we did, several times. I remember this was the same that would happen with my ex-girlfriends. I'd need to revisit the subject many times, like I knew there was something that I was not being told. I noticed it's getting so much worse, and I am so worried. Before I used drugs, I didn't have any diagnosis, but I was never normal. I had mood swings, ADHD, and now I can look back and be certain of this. When I stopped, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD. I started with valproate, then lithium, because it was not effective. Less than 2 weeks ago, I started 50 milligrams of quetiapine every night because lithium, even on 300 milligrams IR or 450 milligrams ER, was making me so intoxicated that I was dysfunctional, cognitively impaired. I couldn't even finish a sentence without having my thoughts interrupted by something I could not explain. I wonder what your opinion is. How come a bipolar person is having this kind of mental breakdown? Why? How do I stop this? It's like I am a prisoner of my own mind. It is so painful to see everything around you decay because you are not able to live. I thought so many times about taking my own life, just to be free of the pain. I have so much, and I should be grateful. These thoughts should not be important to me, but they are destroying my life little by little. Story, I feel like I'm losing my mind here and my parents are draining me. So I'm a 17F, about to graduate, so it's a given that my parents are a little on edge, not a little, no, they've thrown themselves off and hit every paranoia tree on the way down. So a little background, my parents are Hispanic, Puerto Rico, so therefore I am, they are also heavily Catholic, so therefore I am not. I am diagnosed with ASD and ADHD, both attention and hyperactivity, So like I mentioned earlier, I'm about to graduate and that has made me take a step back and look at my life. I'm going to preface this by saying, my parents are not bad people, and I have been lucky enough to enjoy a nice comfortable life. They are flawed and I love them, but I don't think their rules are a good fit for me or my mental health. Anyway, I'm going to be 18 soon, and after I graduate I plan to head off to college. So something my parents are starting to do is trying to make me become more independent, which is not a bad thing in itself. The problem lies in their approach to this. I am the only girl in my family aside from my mother, so in a traditionally Hispanic Catholic household, I was the precious flower in need of protecting. I was never allowed to do anything. I couldn't go outside to play by myself. We lived on a military base, probably one of the safest places. I wasn't allowed to get dirty or sit with my legs up, because I was a lady. These were just the small things. My father used to say to me, "Seen, not heard." He said this to all of us, my two brothers, one younger, one older. But to me he usually accompanied that with this phrase, "Ladies must not be loud." I didn't cut my hair because my mom thought I looked better with long hair and dresses. I couldn't wear shorts, except under my dress, and around this time, I was being severely bullied by my classmates. They would pull my hair, put glue in it, touch it without asking, drop books on my head, trip me, tear up my papers, etc. And when I told my parents a month later, they got upset at me for not telling them earlier, and how it was my fault that it continued because I didn't fight back. I was 12 years old, so their solution was to tell me that every boy wanted to defile me, and how every girl was jealous and wished they could be me. So what happened? I started to feel that my self-worth was tied to my looks and virginity. I couldn't make regular friends, and the ones I did make I couldn't hang out after school. Again, military base West Point if you're interested, super small. My friend lived down the road from me, because my parents didn't trust them and didn't think I could make good friends. And every time we went out, and still to this day, my mother will make comments on my clothing, about how much it's showing. And when I was young and on the playground, I was always scolded because older men were looking up my dress, and I was running around and acting childish. Still 12 here, my parents were sexualizing my body before I even had an idea about what the fuck that meant. When I started wearing bras, my parents would get upset if we were on a trip and my brothers complained that I wasn't wearing one. Not at me, but that my brothers and I were fighting. Huh? How was that my fault? But in the moment and the moments after that, I felt bad that I was going through puberty. It all came to a head when I was 13, and I was essayed by the girl I called my best friend. And I broke. For as long as I can remember, my self-worth came from my purity and my innocence, and that had been taken from me by the person I called my best friend. I had been bullied before, but now it felt worse. I started to notice that boys were commenting on my body. People would grope me in gym. I forgot a bra for gym one day, and a girl took me aside and scolded me for tempting the boys, all the while behind closed doors. My body was being taken from me without my consent. And once she cut me off from all my support systems, she told me she hated me and abandoned me. I had been so focused on what boys may do, nobody even seemed to look at what a girl may do. This is when I started trying to find myself. I realized I was bisexual. And this is when I started to argue with my parents more about going to church. How could I go to a place where everything told me I was a broken, damaged good, and what I wanted and what I felt didn't matter? I still respected their views and religion. I only wish they gave me that same respect. I didn't believe in God anymore, because how could I believe in a being who is said to be loving and kind, when what happened to me was one of the most heinous things that could happen to a person? I begged and begged for anyone to come save me. I prayed and prayed, but nobody did. I can't believe in the idea of what God is, when He lets so many things happen. Free will be damned. I've tried to tell my parents that I don't want to go to Mass because of my beliefs and what they've said about people like me, and my mother just says, "While you live in my house, it is my job to teach you about the Lord. But I'm not forcing you to go, but if you choose not to go, you will bear the consequences when I get home." So I go, because I really have no other choice. My parents are the type to punish me until they've decided on a punishment. I can feel people stare at me. I've caught older men staring up my dress. I feel uncomfortable in my own skin and violated. But do my parents listen? No, because by setting my boundaries, I'm disrespecting them. I told them recently what happened to me, and first thing my mom said was, "Why didn't you tell me?" My mom is a therapist BTW, has her doctorate in marriage and family therapy. I would have thought that of all people my mother would understand why I couldn't say anything. While I was being SA in my own home, the person told me, she said, "No one cares about you, you're alone, look here, we are in your house and nobody is here to help." And when nobody did come, that cemented that thought process in my head. I finally gained the confidence to tell my mother and father, and my parents asked me if I could try to call her or her mom to try and sort things out. I waited until we moved out of the state to say something. Why the fuck would I want to call them? My father was upset that I didn't fight back, that I didn't say anything, and that he raised me better than this. This is the reaction they always have when I tell them something like this. Why didn't I do it sooner? My father has diagnosed PTSD and was abused by his mother. Does he like to talk about it? No. Did he tell anyone during the time it was happening? No. And what he said to me broke the sliver of trust one had in my parents. He told me, after I had just told him how I was violated by the person I called my best friend, "I don't get why you lied to me, I have trauma, and some of it, Munica, which means doll, how fitting, probably is worse than yours." What the fuck? He does have trauma and that is valid, but no trauma is worse than another. Why don't I trust them? Why don't I tell them about when I'm groped, dehumanized, and violated? Because every time I do, they make it about them, how I hurt them, how I lied to them. And somehow I'm always at fault. I gave them my trust and respect, and every time I try to set boundaries or share something with them, they spit in my face. Literally, my father spits a lot when he scolds me, and he has the habit of getting in my face, so when I tell him he's spitting on me, I'm being disrespectful for interrupting him and talking back. They've told me that spitting in someone's face is one of the most disrespectful things you could do. And all they've shown me is that I'm not allowed to be my own person, that I don't own my own body. They've told me this. Am I over what happened to me? Fuck no, I still have trouble coming to terms with it. I keep thinking, what if I overreacted? What if I just imagined it? What if it's my fault? I have to work through it, but I won't be doing that with the people who throw my trust back in my face, this time covered in shit. I know they love me and I in turn, but that doesn't give them the right to do whatever they want because they're my parents. Because we're Hispanic, there is a hierarchy. Basically anyone who's older than you is better and worth more as a person, and you have to bend over backwards for whatever they want. If you don't, you're disrespecting not only them, but the people who raised me too. That is how it will be for the rest of my life. When my parents get older, it's expected that I take care of them full time, as well as financially support them. The only way I will be higher than someone in the hierarchy is if I or my brothers have children. I am never going to treat my potential offspring like I was. Nobody deserves to feel like they mean less than the rest of their family just because they're young. Nobody should not have the right to privacy or setting boundaries. My parents can set boundaries, but I can't because they're my parents, and the rules don't apply to them. It's giving Nixon vibes. They have parental controls on my phone, drawing tablet, and TV. Family Link, the app for 12-year-olds. I'm 17, they go through my journal, they go through my history, they are angry they don't have biometrics on my phone, they get upset at my password because they can't remember it. I've given it to them. I changed it to a pattern to make it easier for them. They go through my room, trash, drawings, etc. They've removed my door, because I closed it, not locked it, closed it. I'm not allowed to lock my room. They don't trust me enough to chat with my friends on Discord. Some of them don't have a phone, because I'm too naive, whatever the fuck that means. I can't spend my own money, and get in trouble if I use it to buy food. I can't go out with friends if my parents don't like them. They don't like a lot of them. They go through my sketchbook, and if they don't like what I drew, they ask me to shred it. If I refuse, they shred it themselves. It's usually just characters from a horror game, or supernatural characters, i.e., Wendigos, zombies, giraffes. I don't draw furry porn like they think. That shit is nasty. They say it's too graphic and mature for me, the person who drew them. So I draw digitally, and don't draw anything I like to draw. It's gotten to the point that when they threaten me with my phone, electronics, or whatever I've been hyper-fixating on. I don't care. I don't become emotionally attached to anything because I know that it is at risk of being destroyed. Strict parents can teach you a lot, like how to recognize who's walking by the sound of their feet, or how to fake being asleep, well enough to trick to military veterans. I have done this. Or my personal favorite, how to find a loophole in parental controls. Like just getting a second browser app and connecting it to a new email, then put parental controls on that email that you control from your drawing tablet, so they can't get control of that browser. Or how to remotely control the family computer and put porn in your parents' personal user history so they get upset at it and try to clear it, resetting their settings in their process, without having to touch it and leave no trail. I don't watch porn, but I do sometimes like to screw with them, then they wonder how it got there, and if you get caught, just do the same thing a little differently. Strict parents aren't teaching their kids to be better than others, they're teaching them how to get better at hiding and finding loopholes. And then your kids don't trust you and you lose your relationship when they turn 18. It is my life, I'm not going to give it up just so I can cater and nanny to my parents' every whim. Don't get me wrong, if they need it I'll take care of them, but I'm not going to do it because I have to and it's my obligation as their child to return the favor of them raising me. If I do, it will be because I want to, and I love them. That may sound cold and heartless, but I didn't choose to be born, they choose to have me. And when they did that, it is their obligation to raise the child they brought into the world. If they didn't want me, they shouldn't have had me. Get an abortion or put me up for adoption. But I'm not going to sacrifice my life just because they got a participation award for parenting. I love my parents, and I know deep down that they don't know what they do is hurtful. No matter how hard I try, I can't explain my feelings and how my experiences affected me, to people who didn't grow up with it, to people who don't want to understand because it challenges their worldview. There is a lot more, but this has gone on for way too long, and I don't think many people will read this whole thing. Story, entitled Mother Scolds Me for Pushing Her Daughter Away. This story happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My family and I were at an amusement park, which we always visit for a day every year. We had a lot of fun with all the different attractions. The park also had smaller attractions for children that used park coins. I was always a very patient person and always avoided conflicts because I am also very sensitive. As a child, politeness and respect were always the most important thing to me, whether child or adult. I always got on better with older people than children my age. In any case, there was a pirate attraction with 2 ships where several children could shoot cannons loaded with foam balls at each other. It was in a closed room and the parents could watch from outside through a grate. These cannons, however, required special coins to work. I had always been a pirate fan and was keen to try it out. We were never a rich family, and so I was taught how important saving is. These coins only cost €1 or so, but I didn't want to waste money. So I only got 3 coins and went into this attraction. I put a coin in the cannon and started playing with other children. Me alone against 4 other children. They bombarded me with the other cannons and I defended myself as best I could, which wasn't really a problem. But one of the children was a little girl aged 6 to 8 who made it fun to manipulate me and pushed me and the cannon away so that I couldn't aim and couldn't really play. I asked several times not to push me, but the girl just didn't listen to me. Since she knew that the cannon had a timer, I felt harassed because I was alone against 4 children. The timer was almost at the end and it was also my second coin. The girl continued to pull and push me, after several requests. I didn't want to use any more coins and wanted to take advantage of the time, so I grabbed the girl by the arm and looked her straight in the face and told her to stop. She burst into tears and ran out of the room. I was able to use the time again and play again. After a few minutes, a woman shouted at me. At first I didn't notice her because I was too deep in my defense. When I realized that she was shouting at me, I politely asked what the problem was. The woman replied, "You hit and insulted my daughter." I was taken aback and said calmly that I didn't hit her and tried to explain my point of view to her. She didn't let me get a word in edgewise and shouted at me while the girl on her leg grinned maliciously. She said I should apologize immediately and leave her daughter alone and let her do what she wanted. She apparently thought I was a violent child. During the discussion, a sound was heard which signaled that the timer of the cannon had run out. Emotionally charged and feeling attacked from all sides, I left the room and in disappointment how people cannot respect each other. I then found my family and told them what had happened to me because I was already crying because I was being insulted for something I didn't do. Afterwards, I went to another attraction with my sister to distract myself for a moment. My father, a person with little patience, saw the mother and confronted her. I didn't notice and came back and saw my father and the daughter's mother having a heated argument. My mother didn't want to attract attention and asked my father to be quieter. The mother saw me as a liar and a bully and insulted me. A little later, the father came and we explained the situation. He was a very reasonable gentleman and apparently knew immediately who the liar was and scolded his wife and daughter. He apologized and took mother and daughter to the exit of the amusement park. My mother was pretty embarrassed about this incident because we got so much attention and was angry with my father for reacting like that. I apologized for the situation getting out of hand. We tried to enjoy the day and I tried to lighten the mood, but it was in vain. Everyone in the family was pissed off for the day and we left the park to go home. I thought it was a shame that we lost our mood and fun just because of an argument. But the next year we went back and had a great time. I tried not to mention this story again until a few years later. But I will not forget this experience. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.